From Chiron Return and for the Pacifica Radio Network, welcome to Planet Waves FM. I'm Eric Francis Compolino, your host for the next hour or so. Tonight's edition is for Friday, May 23rd, 2025. Welcome to our program, wherever you may be in the world, in the future, or in your state of mind. It's good to be with you. Good to be with you at this most extraordinary moment that we are in right now. Does it feel like it? I don't know if it feels like it. I don't really have a sense of how much of anyone feels besides myself, and that's plenty enough of an adventure. Of course, I'm always interested in hearing from you about how you're doing and how you're getting through the days and what you think of this moment. Though I will say that to think of this moment as what it is requires going beyond the normal scope of your thoughts, the normal range that you roam in. Now, there's a word for it that I'm trying to think of, and it'll come to me in a moment. One's ken. That's the word. Your ken is kind of like if I recall correctly, it's kind of an SAT word, but the limits on your perception, how far you're capable of going, how far you're capable of thinking, like what your normal thought set is, how many colors you have in your crayon box. The moment that we are in is a transpersonal moment. It is a large moment in the history of things. The history of things meaning the history of humanity, but we are at, as I have been saying, and I realize I'm not terribly optimistic about this and glowing about how much money you're all going to make on AI, because every time I scratch my head, I come up upon somebody else with a video or something else claiming how wealthy you too can be if you get into this game. The moment that we are in is much, much bigger than that. The totality of the technology environment that is being rolled out right before our eyes, right under our feet, being sprayed on us, dumped on our heads, and which we're being reminded exists every day by the constant vibrations and reminders, is, please allow me to explain to you, much, much larger than nearly anyone thinks. I have seen a couple, one that I can think of in particular. I'll be able to hopefully backtrack back to it, of someone who said, a psychologist, I believe, who gets it, and he said, no, this is the biggest thing that's happened since the development of language. Okay, he's on to something. He's on to something, and you can tell he probably has read McLuhan. If he's comparing it to he actually said the printed word or the written word, which have there's some overlap to those, obviously, but that's how far back we're going. I think he said the written word. So if we take the written word, we're going back to the development of phonetic alphabets. Now, the thing is, with phonetic alphabets, the onset was very slow. We were not living in this kind of totally etheric reality where something can happen completely on the other side of the globe. There can be an earthquake in Tasmania, and we know about it in 30 seconds, in 5 minutes. Your news feed goes off. This setup alone is incredible. And now, what's happening is the outsourcing of thought, the outsourcing of creativity, the outsourcing of curiosity, the outsourcing of the synthesis of language, of ideas. And I concede, I have been somewhat pessimistic. Now, if you were to read The Awakening, my 2025 annual edition, where I look at the astrology from a purely personal standpoint, by sign and by rising sign, in a series of 6,000-word essays, 9,000 in the case of Pisces. Just thought I'd give a little bit of extra for my fishy cousins. I'm not meekly pessimistic. What is grating on me at this moment is that that so few people even seem meekly conscious that something absolutely seismic is happening, and also appear to just simply be rolling over and playing dead. Like, give me another whiff of soma, gas me to sleep a little bit more, please. Entertain me while all this is going on. Feed me, feed my feed, feed my. That's an interesting word, right? Feed me, feed my feed. Content. I want content. I want more content. Okay, so yeah, well, this is not more content. Something that can take your brain, or what will imitate your brain, your thought forms, meaning synthesis of thought, synthesis of language. They're all called deep language models, and take it away from you. What are you doing here then? What do you need to be alive in a body for? Why do you go through all this trouble? Maybe you don't care so much. Well, why don't you care? Maybe you cared more in a previous time. You probably did care more in a previous time. When I shortened the Planet Waves daily astrology feature, sometime in the early 20-teens, 2012, 2013, maybe 2014, I shortened it to 400 words a day. And I shouldn't have said anything. 400 words a day. That's a lot of content. It was free. It was free. People were up in arms. Twitter, you're making your website into Twitter. No, Twitter was 140 characters at the time. Like a sentence. I'm talking about 400 words. 400 words. How many words in the Declaration of Independence? More than 400, but still 400 words. It's a good amount. They were upset. And now it's like, no, I need you. The message that the content makers are getting back from the internet is, I need you to reduce all that you do down to like 9 words, grind it up and blow it up my nose. Like the Yanomamo Indians take their drugs. They blow the drugs up one another's nose. We are reducing all of reality to a drug. And now we're going to introduce this thing that like does it all for us. You can make virtual you that comments on websites. So I guess what I'm looking for is some response to this issue. Some consciousness that says, well, maybe we've got a situation on our hands. And I will tell you that for all the different things that you see me doing, whether it's the world's only COVID chronology, spanning from 2006 to the end of 2021, whether it's Book of Blue and this whole elaborate diary and erotic art project, whether it's Planet Waves and all the forms of astrology that I do, whether it's any form of the investigative reporting, it is all based on the same concept of a spiritual errand. I am in this life, I am here in this life on a spiritual errand. It takes many forms. Most of them don't have the usual, this is spiritual, right? I'm not talking about, Saint Holy Mona Delphi, who's had a vision of something in the year 6, and then we're all going to worship the vision of Holy Saint Holy Delphi in the year 6. No, that's not. And I'm not here to tell you about why you shouldn't mix milk and meat. There's plenty of people who will tell you that. You can get them on the phone right away, or email them. They'll give you a long spiel. Google it. You'll get 25,000 results. I am here on the spiritual errand of consciousness, on the spiritual errand of, in a sense, being a moderator of awareness. I have my lapses of awareness. I hope they catch up with me pretty quickly. I make, discoveries every day, but that's part of the process of awareness. And so, while I'm here on this errand of awareness, I'm looking for other people who are showing signs of being aware, who are showing signs of being willing to be aware, who are showing signs of being willing to be aware of what they don't really want to be aware of. And one of the things about the digital life that we have emerged into is that we get these machines, these algorithms that filter out all that we don't want to be aware of. They're called feeds. Feed me. Feed me. Awareness. Chiron. First keyword of Chiron, in my opinion. Yes, there are others. The Maverick, a keyword given by its discoverer, Charles Kowal, who discovered this very, very unusual planet in 1977. Maverick, the one who does things differently than other people do things. Maverick. Then another keyword became, let's see, what was the first one? And he names it after a hybrid creature, after a thing that is part human, part horse, because it represented so many different things. Next keyword for Chiron would be healing. Chiron was raised by his adopted father, Apollo, who taught him the medical arts. And the medical arts flowed to the human race, such as they may be, and I suspect that they were probably better at points in the past. They flowed to the human race from Chiron through Asclepius, the god of medicine. So the god of medicine learns medicine from Chiron. Chiron is also a mentor to an entire generation of Greek heroes from the classical era. That would include Jason. It would include Heracles, and there were others to whom he was teacher. I think Achilles was one of his students. Students of mythology may know more. So we have the concept of mentorship involved with Chiron. And it is often a mentorship in the healing arts, but mentorship is any time a more experienced person conveys their knowledge, their hard-won, time-enduring knowledge to any other person, generally on a one-on-one basis. That's a form of teaching called mentorship, another very important function of Chiron. But what we in action, Chiron will kind of go into somewhere and raise things. It'll kind of flush out what needs to be seen, what needs to be brought to awareness. This is really the true art of Chiron. And so you could say that, well, there's a concept of Chiron that we might sum up as healing through the raising of awareness and then acting on what that awareness suggests should be the proper course of action, the thing to do based on what your awareness is telling you. And so you think, well, do we need this? Yeah, we really need this, because awareness seems to be the real sticking point, and the real sticking point here. And is a very serious sticking point in digital life, where we are in this realm of constant distraction, and the distractions are almost all designed to take you away from what does work for you and make you pay money for something that does not work for you. Almost everything on the internet only takes and does not give. Especially with this thing called porn, only takes and does not give. And the reason I bring up Chiron is because we are now in this tremendous moment of Chiron. On Monday, the new moon in Gemini takes place. At the same time, Chiron forms its exact conjunction with Eris. This is happening for the first time since 1971, 1972. A tremendous watershed moment. For those who lived through them, the 1970s had a kind of an odd relationship to the 1960s, where it seemed like things were an extension of the 1960s, but then they have this completely other character, this completely other flavor. And what was interesting here, and this is a little bit of generational astrology, perhaps your introduction to the topic of generational astrology, was that from around 1963 to around 1968, the dominant astrology was taking place, and by which I mean these slow-moving planets holding an aspect pattern that defined a generation of it's kind of a very large subgeneration of births, really the first generation after the baby boomers, the first subgeneration, typically called Gen X, and we're talking about now people who are today in their they're ranging from their like late 50s, 56, 57, out into their early 60s, 61, 62. Were born with this astrology, and then a lot of people lived through the astrology, and it was provocative in the lives of many, 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 many people who lived through it, which you can see when you go back to the historic record of the 1960s, or you check the charts of people who just flourished in the 1960s. The chances are they had some strong Virgo Pisces prominence in their charts. And the reason why they would be responding to the 1960s was that the astrology was coming through very strong in Virgo and Pisces. In Virgo, there's a conjunction that happens every 130, 140 years-ish, depending on the speed of Pluto at that particular time. The conjunction of slow mover Uranus and ultra slow mover Pluto, and we got this result in Virgo. This is very important that it was Virgo, a feminine sign, a mutable sign, and a sign where the first key word for that sign is service. Across the dial was Chiron in Pisces. And so Chiron was certainly very active through the entire 1960s. I think of Chiron in Pisces as kind of being the Beatles factor. One of the things that made the 60s, which was really in truth a very, very difficult time historically, that made it special was the music. And the music is always going to come through Pisces in some form. There's always going to be some Pisces element, however it shows up in a musician's chart, or whether they don't have any planets there, but they're drawing on this quality anyway. And one of the first keywords of Pisces is sacrifice. Okay, I'm not advocating for sacrifice. I'm just saying that in well-established astrology, going back quite a way, people understand that Pisces is willing to give itself for a purpose, and this is related to and in a powerful contact aspect with Uranus-Pluto going on in Virgo service. And so when the astrology through the 1960s was dominated by Virgo and Pisces, there was a certain vibe in the air. And, summarized, I think, best by an organization, kind of a theater troupe active in the Bay Area called The Diggers, a very famous kind of cultural, should be more famous. I don't know who's, but anyway, who writes this stuff down. No, but the Diggers were kind of a service-oriented guerrilla theater group, the Diggers. And their theory was, let's make everything free. Let's figure out how to make things free. And the Black Panthers, also active in the 1960s, in this time of service and sacrifice. You think of the Black Panthers as being like, these real, tough, badass mofos. But I got to have dinner one night with Bobby Seale, their kind of minister of, I think his official title was the minister of propaganda of the Black Panthers, and I, by a combination of factors, ended up having dinner, like a long dinner, with him, my then epic girlfriend Sabine Ferrandou, this astonishing French woman who, if you ever took one look at her, you would have said, yeah, that's Coppolino's girlfriend. So she was there. We were in San Francisco, and we end up with one other person who I don't know, and I don't think I've ever laughed so hard in my entire life. I mean, I felt like I needed oxygen. Bobby Seale is one of the funniest people on earth. And what Bobby Seale told me was the story of the Black Panthers. I got to hear the story of the Black Panthers right from Bobby Seale's mouth, including the Chicago 7 and the Chicago 1 where he was falsely tried and bound and gagged in the courtroom. But before that, before all that happened, he said, and the Black Panthers, in case you don't know it, they were like the original cop watchers. They would show up at the scene of police interventions with like lawfully owned shotguns, tape recorders in the age before videotape, and like the California penal law, the California prosecution code. And they would intervene at the scene of police, at arrest and so forth, and be like, okay, what law is this? And they were armed and they were dangerous. And he said, and they never shot anybody once ever. And he said, you would think that would get like the FBI up in arms. That would be the thing that we'd get in trouble for. And he said it wasn't. He said, when we got in trouble for the breakfast program. The breakfast program. The Black Panthers organized, working through community organizations, civic organizations, churches, and various forms of basically merchants, food merchants, to donate enough food every day to feed 150,000 poor children breakfast every day. Service, a touch of sacrifice. He said that's what got us in trouble. Nobody cared about the law books, the tape recorders, and the shotguns. But feeding 150,000 kids a day free breakfast before school, that got the attention of the authorities. And I have to tell you, I was dumbstruck. And so we learned many things about the 1960s from this confluence of like facts. But that was the 1960s. And it was, on one level, on the social level, that Pisces, Virgo, service, sacrifice oriented, and let's do this well and intelligently. Virgo, let's do this beautifully. Let's make art. Let's make music. Music for the people, food for the people, power to the people. Virgo, Pisces. Late 68 into 69, the energy starts to shift to Aries. Chiron goes in to Aries, and then suddenly there's a whole other vibe. Now, it's not that the vibe of the 60s, ended exactly in 1968. The Woodstock Festival happens as one of, the last. I kind of think of it as the end, the party at the end of the end of the 60s, where they weren't all there at once, but about 400,000, a little more maybe, young people passed through a farm in upstate New York, owned by Max Yasker. And truly in the spirit of the 1960s, he let them use his farm. I think he was paid like $50,000, which was a lot of money back then, but it ultimately killed him. He ultimately gave his life. He was sued by all of his neighbors, but before it turned his life upside down, there was a demonstration that you could put 400,000 young people on together on a field with great music, pouring down rain most of the weekend, and basically have no mishaps. Everyone took care of everyone. There was that's it. There were no violent incidents. The community was kind of like Burning Man before Burning Man. The citizens kept the community together. No one, some people, a couple of people may have paid, but the fences came down. The concert became a free concert. And there still was in that moment this tremendous spirit of service and sacrifice. But the 1960s take hold, and Chiron in Aries starts to approach Eris in early Aries. Now remember, neither of these planets had been discovered yet. So Chiron in Aries starts to approach Eris at that time in very early Aries. Let's get the degree location of this, and that will take me a second. And the energy shifts. There's a palpable change, and there is this boost given to the zeitgeist, but the boost goes in the direction of Chiron and Eris working through this, mainly working through Aries. And now Aries is not about any form of sacrifice and service at all. Nothing to do with it. Aries is about me. That's what Aries is about. Who am I? What am I? Self-concept, identity, identity, identity. And it is very difficult for people with strong prominences in Aries, especially when they're either under a lot of energy or when they are in some way where they're supported, where that same property is supported, which you'll see in a good few charts. There is almost total self-obsession. And at the time, in the 1970s, the young people were being referred to in the press as the me generation. Just like we call the millennials, and we call these theories are all complete horseshit. But for the sake of discussion, these millennials, here comes Gen Y, here comes Gen Z, here's this generation, here's that generation. Well, young people in the 1970s were being chided for their selfishness. This is not a problem in the 1960s. It was not even a thing in the 1960s. But by the time the 70s take hold and Chiron enters Aries, and then we have Uranus, the disruptor, the revolutionary in Libra, turning over the whole notion of harmonious relationships. Okay, there's like no such thing as a harmonious relationship with Uranus in Libra. So this and people are responding to this. Now, a lot of people are born in the early 70s, really like 68 through probably around 75 with Uranus in Libra. But at the time, young people who were born mainly in the 50s and were the kind of the up and coming, how they always are, the up and coming generation. It's always like this object of fascination, almost pornographic fascination. Ooh, look at them. Ooh, how do those young people dress? Ooh, wow, they go out naked and don't want anyone to look at them. There's no such thing as a harmonious relationship just based on Uranus in Libra. And so there's a disruption, and there's a disruption to the aesthetic quality that Libra brings. I mean, pretty much everything is beautiful in Libra, but when you add, when you add Uranus, you almost get like the graffiti on the New York City subway, and in a way it can be beautiful, but it's not. It certainly bears no resemblance to classical beauty. There's no sense of balance. I mean, so it whacks out the balance. So we've got the 60s become the 70s as Uranus enters the Libra, and Chiron, Eris take hold in Aries. And so we've got the disruption to the we of Libra and the disruption to the I of Aries. Are you following me along here? And then right in that moment is the first Chiron, Eris conjunction in Aries, like we are having now. Now, why do we have two in Aries? That's because Eris takes 130 years to go through Aries. It's got a 556-ish year orbit. They keep adjusting it. And it spends more than a quarter of that orbit in one sign, in Aries. Chiron, for its part, takes just slightly over 50 years to orbit the sun once. And so in 1971, Eris was at about 12.5 degrees of Aries, and Chiron shows up. And now in 2025, they're having another conjunction, because Eris has only moved a little, that is taking place on Monday at 25 degrees and 28 minutes. So now we're having the second Chiron Eris conjunction in Aries. And it might help to know a little bit about the first one. I mean, and what happens really, one of the things that happens at the first one is that everything goes basically from we to me. There is this kind of I think, kind of bullshit, do your thing individualism. Everybody do your thing, do your thing. I mean, that's cool in a way. I mean, all right, do your thing. And then sometimes, like, we want to do our thing, or you might want to do my thing, or I might want to do your thing. So it was actually a catchphrase in the early 1970s. Do your thing, do your thing, your thing, do your thing. Okay. How individualistic is that? How individual? I don't know. But what was also going on was that movements, social movements that both required and benefited from and thrived upon coalition began to fracture. And the coalitions became all of these separate things. So we have, all of a sudden, as the 70s take shape, we have, I'm gonna miss a few, but the student movement, and the Back to the Land movement, and the New Age movement, and the women's movement, and the gay rights movement, and the Black Power movement, and the Puerto Rican Power movement, and the American Indian movement, the intentional community movement. There's movement. Everybody's got a movement going on, only the movements are partitioned. Now, however you think this happened, and there's a viable theory that this was instigated, though I don't, I really think it was in the zeitgeist more than it was in, like, the COINTELPRO program by the FBI, like, messing with everyone. And a lot of what COINTELPRO did was it messed with individuals. It screwed up individuals. I mean, for example, a part of the COINTELPRO, COINTELPRO, involved leaving, like, they would get into the movement leader's girlfriend's dresser drawer and leave a love letter from another girl, so she would find it in her dresser drawer and then get mad at her husband and, like, completely ruin his life at that moment. COINTELPRO, ain't it grand? So I don't think that's what split up the movements of the 1960s and turned them into these completely fractured, fragmented movements of the 1970s. I think it was something to do with the zeitgeist of Chiron conjunct Eris. And the conjunction continues through 1972 and basically propels what we think of as really the early 1970s were very distinctive from the late 1970s, but it propels this kind of second psychedelic revolution, and there seemed to be a lot of activism and all of this stuff. Most of it wasn't that impressive. It was almost all special interest group, and my special interest is better than your special interest. It's a lot of sanctimonious stuff. I'm more special than you. I'm a member of XYZ special movement. We are the most important movement because X, Y, and Z reasons. Well, which you have to accept or you're against us. So a lot of what we live with today, a lot of this really mean, I think, totally counterproductive identity politics. The politics of essentially wearing a button. And you might think it's deeper. You might think that button, no, this button, it goes straight into my flesh. I don't just wear a button. It goes into my epidermal tissue and my muscle. I wear a button proudly because it's stuck into my skin. That does not make you somebody special. But it's quite, people really think this is just a wonderful thing. My headquarters is better than your headquarters. That, so forth and so on and so on. And, and from that point on, coalition building became like this special thing. And I think that things get pretty fraught. Things get pretty fraught. And from there, the idea that there can be a social movement that gains civil rights or that, really accomplishes anything, kind of went by the wayside. But the ones who really organized, I will say that and I think it is still impressive. The conservatives who were against Roe versus Wade, a movement that began before Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court ruling now overturned that guaranteed women the right to terminate a pregnancy, and that time before the first 12 weeks, the conservatives got together before Roe versus Wade. When I covered the overturning of Roe versus Wade, I studied again. I went back through the history of this again, and they were well underway, and they stuck with it for 50 damn years. They focused on one goal. The right-wing lunatic fringe fundamentalists and the liberal Catholics and everybody else all rallied around for half a century, and they got what they wanted. They got what they wanted. And that's not necessarily a very whatever that is. And my position on this issue is I am starting to see the dangers of unregulated abortion. That is not my concept of sexual responsibility. That is not my concept of sexual freedom. I have a whole other concept of sexual freedom and lots of other ways to not get pregnant, so you don't have to go through this outrageous trauma. By the way, I mean all the ads for abortion never say that they never, is there counseling in Planned Parenthood before the fact that says, you may regret this decision for the rest of your life. You may regret this decision for the rest of your life. I don't know of any such thing. So we are now in this moment of Chiron conjunct Eris, and we are in this moment of Chiron conjunct Eris in this moment of maximum fragmentation, and that is what Eris does the very, very best. Eris is a fragmenting influence. Eris likes to not only shake things up, but break things up, and it has certainly served to fracture consciousness. Eris has been in Aries since around 1920. It was a long phase in going like 7 or 8 ingresses between Pisces and Aries, and we start to get this even in those early days, a fragmenting of the individual and the formation of reality under this kind of pretext of tribes. But it's not until Chiron gets there in the early 70s and pushes the issue that we see how far this can go. Basically, in a sense, to divide everyone off from everyone else and to advance this notion that that thing there doesn't matter. My thing here is what matters. Over and over and over and over again. And now here we are, one cycle later, where with both of these planets now finally having been discovered, where the question is, okay, what have we wrought? What have we done? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Who have we become? And now it's perfectly common sense to just attack somebody online. You just, I mean, it would be the equivalent of waiting at the bus stop, hauling off and just punching the person. The way, and it's done anonymously. It was very hard before the internet to do anything anonymously. That's the whole joke of cutting up the letter with the hostage note. We have your child. Please send $1 million. That was because anonymity was very, very difficult, and now at the same time, we've completely breached privacy. That's an Eris and Aries factor. That was the entire electrical age completely demolishes the notion of privacy. We become obsessed with anonymity. So we are now in the next wave, and this is a very special moment to have arrived at the first Chiron-Eris conjunction since 1971, 1972. And it's what are we talking? How many? 50-something, 53 years, right? I've got that right. And so all I can tell you is that there is something about this moment that is distinctive, and there is something that is likely to be a kind of a before and after moment of the Chiron-Eris conjunction. But here we are, right at the fulcrum. Here we are, right at the crux point I would say, in the spirit of Chiron, let's pay attention. And in the spirit of Chiron, which is a unifying force, let's start to address the issue of this completely destabilizing fragmentation that we are living through, and it ain't easy. All right, so I had planned. Well, let's see. Now, how am I going to do this? Because I'm tracking an audio and video at the same time, and they're two completely different animals. Because the video is run through a soundtrack. In other words, it's like a whole other. It's like this the timing, the tracks. Like once you edit and everything aligns. So I don't want to go too far. We're already like 45 minutes in. So we're gonna go to the first song break. I'm gonna keep the video running, and I'm gonna complete my discussion of the astrology of this weekend. So let's talk about the music for this weekend. A long time ago, in 1974, just slightly over 50 years ago, kind of 50.7 years ago, was an album released by Bob Dylan called Planet Waves. And if you're wondering, yes, that's exactly where I got the title of the Planet Waves website, and I'm in contact with the Bob Dylan organization quite frequently, and my contact there and Special Rider Music like my concept to do the Bob Dylan Planet Waves album for Bob Dylan's what would be his 84th birthday, which is tomorrow. And so let's play a perfect song from 1974 from the Planet Waves album. This is Tough Mama.
Taking on your bone, I'm gonna
Bob Dylan and the band. I guess some of that co-written with Robbie Robertson, uncredited. Tough Mama on Planet Waves FM. Tough Mama, meat shaking on your bones. I'm going to go down the river and get some stones. Sisters on the highway with that steel driving crew. Papa's in the big house, his working days are through. Tough Mama, can I blow a little smoke on you? Dark lady, won't you move it on over and make some room, rolling steady, sweeping through the country like a broom. Put your arms around me like a circle around the sun. You got a pocket full of money, but you can't help me none? Shady lady, that dress you're wearing weighs a ton. Angel baby, born of a blinding light and a changing wind, drive me crazy. You know who you are and where you've been. Staring at the ceiling, standing on the chair, big fires blazing, ashes in the air. Angel baby, I wonder what you done back there. I am crestfallen, the world of illusion at my door. I hear you calling, same old thing like it was before. Crawling through the meadow like a lion in the den, heading for the roundup at the rainbow's end. Tough Mama, let's get on the road again. God, it does got a pretty good writer. I love Bob Dylan's writing. Okay, Tough Mama. Onward. Okay, so Chiron Eris conjunction. You heard all about it. I haven't shut up about it for months. Next, Saturn is about to enter Aries. This is important. Saturn entering Aries also officially commences. No, there's no office of official aspects, but, like in Monty Python, the Office of Aspect Certification. Does a swastika quadrate count? Begins the conjunction of Neptune, of Saturn and Neptune. Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So the conjunction doesn't happen this weekend, but the Saturn piece moves into Aries and it meets the Neptune piece in Aries when Neptune entered Aries back in March. Saturn last in Aries in the early 90s and the mid 1970s, 60s, excuse me. So it's 29-year orbits. I don't have that data right in front of me unless I go. I'm not going to look for it, and I can't stop anything because I've got video and audio running. Oh God. So, but for this, what I want to say, I'll say it. I swear to God. What I want to say is, what we got happening now is a lot more important than Saturn in Aries. Though Saturn in Aries, I mean Saturn coming onto the Aries point and the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune on the Aries point, which happens at smack on 1 Aries in February. It's going to be warming up and teasing and going back into Pisces, both elements, Neptune and Saturn. Then early in 26, they're going to both move into Aries and form a conjunction in Aries. And this is the first Saturn-Neptune conjunction since... Nope, hold on. Okay. 1989. So there was a conjunction of Saturn. The most recent conjunction of Saturn and Neptune happened in 1989. This is significant because it was really a three-way conjunction that was forming, and it was forming in Capricorn. Did I say that? That it was in Capricorn. So it's kind of 90 degrees-ish off from where it is today. But there was a three major planet conjunction, which was Uranus, which is still back at 3.5 degrees, and then Saturn and Neptune. And what this is it's the first wave of this major turning point in 20th century history astrologically, right? The astrology tells one story and history tells a parallel story. So when I say astrological history, I mean in the history of the events that are generational defining. So we have a major generation defining event with the conjunction of Uranus and Pluto. That epicenter is really like 63 to 66 tight, and of course it spreads out for many years on either side. But the epicenter, and then the epicenter of Chiron, Eris, was 71, 72, but that too spreads out in both directions for many years. And then the next major development that we get is the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, and really this becomes the Saturn-Neptune-Uranus conjunction in Capricorn. And that becomes the astrology of the 1990s. So it happens in, let's just get these dates right. Hold on a second. Saturn conjunct Neptune. All in 89. The dates are March 3rd, 89, June 23rd, 89, November 13th, 89. And this basically is the first wave of what we could call millennial astrology. So you know that I don't really like these generational characterizations, and 15, 20 years is way too long, and it doesn't encompass the major prominences that happen at certain points during what is falsely defined as like a generation, like Gen X or something like that. There's a lot of water went under the bridge. A lot of astrology went by during what's called Gen X. However, in terms of what we think of as quote unquote millennial, and a certain thing about it that I think is a reasonably accurate assessment of a certain subgeneration because of astrology, not because of this theory by Strauss and Howe that whatever, the fourth turning and all this. Has never really appealed to me that much. And it does not seem to be very accurate either in terms of the predictions that the model can make. But what we had in basically 1989 through around 1994 for a 5-year window, this major watershed set of transitions involving a series of, they were first Saturn conjunct Uranus. So what's going on is that there are two outer planets that are getting real close together, which are slow mover Uranus, 84 years, slow mover Neptune, 164 years. And then Saturn passes through, and it makes a series of conjunctions to Saturn to Uranus, and then Saturn to Neptune, and then Uranus to Neptune. And so it is, and this is all going on from very late Sag clear through Capricorn. Basically, the very earliest stage of the digital world pulling the rug out from under the physical world. And so when there's major disturbances in Capricorn, life is not stable. And we're seeing all kinds of changes to society structure going on through this window of approximately 88, 89 through 93, 94, 95, in that realm, basically the late Bush into the early Clinton years. And so the Saturn-Neptune cycle now is turning over for the first time since the late 1980s. So Chiron Eris, that's early 70s. Now we've got another cycle that's connected to the late 1980s and the early 1990s, and there is this resonance that we have between this time and that time. But but both events are happening together, and so that's probably never happened before. Not at any time anybody had ever heard of astrology. Some of this stuff, for example, the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at 1 Aries. I've looked back with the help of Kirsty Melto to 1 BC. No such thing happened. There have been a few Saturn Neptunes in Aries, but not on the Aries point. So we are getting this extremely rare other thing happening, which is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the Aries point. But this is the precursor to basically the kind of downfall of American civilization. There's really the American empire is basically just held up with the dollar propped up by debt at this point, and a lot of warplanes and aircraft carriers. It's got nothing to do with innovation. It's got nothing to do with really much being the best at anything except making bombs and using them. Carpet bombing. I mean, this is kind of like the American dream now is carpet bombing and nuclear bombs. It's completely ridiculous. But again, we get an example of big time generational astrology happening concurrently with another piece of big time generational astrology, Chiron, Eris, at the same time. Okay, so this is by request. I'm going to add a few thoughts about what that Saturn-Neptune in Capricorn became. It became Uranus-Neptune in Capricorn. So it's just some opening comments on that. This is really extreme spiritual confusion. There is, when Uranus is in the picture, however it's in the picture, whether it's in a conjunction with Pluto, a conjunction with Eris, like we experienced in 2017, like we experienced with Uranus conjunct Neptune in 89 through the mid-90s, the result is extreme confusion and destabilization of thought, destabilization of culture and intellect, which is the defining feature of the times that we are in now. We've been blasted by the astrology of Uranus for quite a while. I'm not going to get into what Uranus is doing starting over the summer, but I have been talking about it in my videos. Okay, so the conjunction of Uranus to Neptune in Capricorn, a very, very important alignment, because it starts to it essentially fracture everything in a whole new way. And society can only function with so much fracturing going on. And when the result of the fracturing is not just the institutions are fractured, but the traditions and people's sense of their own inner being is fractured and fragmented, there can be some very negative results. Now, look, I'm resisting being optimistic about the times we're in. I'm resisting being pessimistic about the times we're in. But it's hard not to be worried. It's hard when you sense the larger movements of society, by which I mean over a period of centuries or millennia, and you see what's happening. This is to me it is very disturbing to see the way the whole culture is moving. But let's for the moment stick on the level of the individual. On the level of the individual, there is tremendous potential available, because we could see quite a bit of, let's say, character recovery under the influence of all of this Aries. The first conscious conjunction of Eris and Chiron. Well, that could be putting together, reassembling many broken pieces of who we are, or going deeper and experiencing the underlying unity of who we are. Right? That's possible, because all that can really be fragmented is the ego. The soul can't really be fragmented. Spirit can't really be fragmented. And so we're on one level, we're talking about the fragmentation of ego, and the thing to do from there is to access a deeper spiritual level. But the mere existence of ego makes that very difficult to do. A whole thought form, a whole thought system, an entire ego is an entire personality based in fear, guilt, and separation. I will say that again. The ego is a kind of a false, we'll add the false, personality based in fear, guilt, and separation. And the fear and the guilt serve the separation, and the separation serves the fear and the guilt. And so this describes anyone who becomes aware of this suddenly knows the problem is spiritual. That there's nothing else for the problem to be other than spiritual. There's nothing else for the problem to be at this point. And I would remind you that the digital problem, this problem of fragmentation, of the fragmentation of society, of the complete bifurcation of this, what I've been calling the ascension of the internet. We've all ascended. We've all heard this word. My old friend David Wilcock was like, he built his whole career on the ascension, the ascension, the ascension. His whole website, I think, was called like Ascension 2012 or something like this. Well, yeah, we ascended. Here we are. How does it feel? I mean, I try to have a good time, I try to bring love into the dream, this electric digital dream of elevated, expanded consciousness. I mean, it's fun if you're creating things. It's fun if you're using it as a means to reach to people in a loving, creative way. That's all you can do with it and feel good. I mean, there's only so much Grubhub you can possibly eat. Oh, bang, pizza profile. You just keep hitting your phone. Pizza profile. It keeps whacking your card for $30, and then the pizzas start coming. You can't eat that many. And you can't eat your pizza profile. Try it sometime. Print it out, soak the paper like in olive oil. No, it doesn't cook up so good. So we have a moment of potential. We have the possibility to, as an act of will, as an act of conscious choice, as an option, to not be so confused, to not be so separated, to not be so divided from ourselves, to not be so hostile, to not be obsessed with things that absolutely do not matter. To take the opportunity to willingly, consciously, knowingly take care of people and recognize and affirm and support and love the people who take care of you. To me, if there's a solution, well, that's a good place to start. And experience something of your own wholeness, something of your own beauty of your existence, in that you are capable of being open to giving and receiving respect, to giving and receiving nourishment, to giving and receiving healthy, loving, compassionate attention to people, and to using your awareness for some other purpose than deciding what you're offended by. This sport of being offended, man, it's a real drag. And it's really one of these sports of our era. Like, how offended can I be? I'm going to pick a side. Now I'm offended by that. Ooh, now I've changed my mind. Now I'm no longer a liberal. I'm a conservative. I'm going to be offended by that now. I used to be offended by the people who were offended by that. Now I'm offended by the people who used to be offended by, and now I'm friends with the people who used to offend me. Yeah. Come on. Can we do better? I have to say, I mean, I want to stop believing that so many people are stupid idiots. And I in my mind, I make all kinds of excuses for why people aren't stupid idiots. And I once had this discussion with Joe, my therapy teacher, and wise consultant who in many ways helped me learn the confidence to do what I do. And we once had a discussion about whether people are stupid. And he said, I mean, and this is somebody who's probably had, thousands of people sit in his therapy chair and, run group therapy many, 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 many times. He says he doesn't think people are stupid. He thinks people basically just kind of don't use their brains. And how much of a difference is there? And if you're lulled into turning off your brain, well, what's that? That's kind of like being in a stupor. I mean, if there's a laughing gas canister on every corner and you walk down the block, does anyone walk down the block anymore? You walk down the block, you take a hit of laughing gas, and you kind of stumble to the next street corner and take another hit. Well, what's that? Well, obviously, underneath all that, you've got some kind of a functioning brain that can at least make the decisions to do that. But there's something, there's an intentional act of suppressing intelligence and feeling. I understand why people do this. I understand the appeal of having an app on your phone that makes your decisions for you, that advises you of what to do. That every day you tell it what you ate, and then it starts telling you what to eat. They're going to have that. So Sam Altman's coming out with a thing that you wear around the clock that has some new special function. Somebody emailed me this today that has some new special thing. People's phones are already spying on how many steps they take and their heart rate and their respiration. It's connected to their Apple Watch and the menstruation apps and this app and that app. And it's like, so this thing is supposedly a new next level thing that spies on your whole life. And then it's going to tell you what to do. And once again, deeper into the matrix, deeper into a place where there may be no coming out. So when I speak, I'm speaking to the people who are not fully immersed under the water. I wish I could say I was speaking to the awakening, and I guess I am speaking to the awakening, to those who have made some conscious decision, who have realized that their life is a brief, fleeting moment, and that if one way to look at it is that it is an experiment in consciousness, and it's an experiment in awareness. And what is awareness? Well, it's this thing that you exercise in the form of curiosity and feeling empathy and wanting to relate to other creatures and feeling creativity and feeling like you're interested in existence. Like that really, that you could say that's consciousness. I mean, and certainly it is possible to live and not be that interested in existence. It's super easy. It's got to be the easiest thing that there is. And you're not necessarily rewarded for coming out of that Neptune fog. You're not necessarily, at least not at first. You may feel like you wake up and the first thing you're aware of is pain. You decide you're going to organize your life, and then you realize how much you've neglected. And it doesn't have to be that way, but it often is, particularly in people who have made a conscious decision to suppress awareness, who have chosen to kind of keep their head underwater. Waking up is hard to do, as my friend Scott Kallichstein wrote, and the question is why. I mean, how much do you like getting up in the morning? Some people are up like a shot. They're like thrilled and ready to go and out the door, and everything's fantastic. Or they're going to make lunch for the kids, and that's going to be fantastic. but not usually. So we're at this moment where we, as described by, and I'm using the planets as signs and symbols, as we have the option to respond to Chiron Eris as a way to become self-aware in the middle of all of this chaos. That's the first awareness there is to become self-aware, cognizant of your own existence, reflective of your own thought process, understanding that your life is your life, and you are here for whatever reason, and maybe you're going to find out what that reason is. Maybe you're going to use your consciousness to, using the tool of curiosity, which for some people just is how they were born. And other people have to be like, learn how to be curious. Oh, I can be curious? That's okay? I can be curious? Well, many of us were punished for being curious. Punishing curiosity is one of the easiest ways to ruin and control and ruin a child. And in terms of helping one another, one of the very most important things that we can do is to encourage one another to be curious. And from there, it's not that far from being curious to actually caring about what you see. I think maybe there are these kinds of perverse forms of curiosity that just want to peer into some other reality and like not be available to be loving, to be supportive in any way. But look, I would ask you to ask yourself why. Like, what are you really doing here? Like, why? Imagine you had to come a long way to be here. Imagine this is not just some random chance. Imagine it's just that your parents didn't give you the choice of whether you wanted to be born. I think that was an article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago that this woman, she always tells her parents, you didn't give me a choice in whether I wanted to be born. Yeah, there's some fabulously creative victimization. Self-victim concept. You didn't give me the choice of when to be born. Madonna mia. Why are you here? Imagine that you're not just the victim of random chance. Imagine you had to come here from somewhere, that you had to get into this form. You had to get your spirit into this meat puppet. And then the next thing you know, you're kind of crawling around on the floor. And then the next thing you know, you're walking around on the planet. Do you wonder? Do you wonder why you're here? Do you allow yourself to have the satisfaction of imagining that you have some actual purpose, some actual reason for being here? Well, theorize. What might it be? Why? What might it be? How much time do you have left? You don't know. You think you have time. This is one of the biggest fallacies of the human experience is we think we have time. Oh, we'll get to that eventually. We'll do that eventually. We'll make that right eventually. I'll call that person eventually and tell them how I actually feel. I will thank my parents. I will call my ex-wife and express my regret for the way that things happened. Eventually. Well, you think you have time. You think you have time. How do you know you have time? I'm not saying live like there's no tomorrow, but I am saying that tomorrow is not guaranteed, and next year is not guaranteed. And if you actually lived like that, how would you live? And so here we are in this moment. On many, you can see that this is unprecedented astrology that we are having. And astrology reflects consciousness. Astrology reflects something in the human condition and something available to us as individuals. What are you doing with this opportunity of life, of existence, this supposedly precious thing? And in the spirit of Aries, Chiron in Aries, Eris in Aries, now Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Do you wonder who you are? And do you live as if the question is a real question with actual validity? From Planet Waves, this is Something About You.
Something there is about you that strikes a match in me. Is it the way your body moves, or is it the way your hair blows free? Or is it because you remind me of something that used to be? Something that's crossed over from another century. All that shaking